Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Calhoun's. Already thinking about where to take the family on Easter Sunday? That's coming up on April 21st. Go ahead, make your reservations at any of the 9 area Calhoun's locations. They set up one heck of a holiday table. Calhoun's, April 21st is Easter. Do a taste of Tennessee on Easter Sunday. All right. Mark and Josh, we're going to go quickly through these. About 90 seconds on this one. I'm going to put up a graphic here in a second over you while you talk. But in hindsight, would Tennessee have benefited from having their schedule more balanced? They played 5 top 25 teams, according to Ken Pomeroy. You can go ahead and put it up. In the first 4 months of the season, and then they played 5 more in the last 3 weeks of the season. And if it's spread out, you might not be looking at it thinking, "Ooh, they're number 1 for all this streak." Would it have been better for Tennessee if that schedule had been spread out?
I think from a perception, from a fan base standpoint, yes, because you probably would have lost 1 or 2 of those tougher games if they were even in the middle of the season. So now the expectation when you're number 1 team in the country for 4 weeks probably would have given a little bit more reality check to it. But you also wouldn't have had this season be as fun as it was because you were ranked for number 1 in the country for 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I would say the same. It might have helped with perception or expectation level entering the tournament, but what if the results are the same? If the results are the same in the postseason and you don't have the 4-week run at number 1 like Tennessee had, then that maybe takes away even more from what you remember from this season. So now maybe they could have managed minutes a little bit better down the stretch if you're playing lesser high-level teams. We'll never know on that one, though.
Mike and Chuck, okay, is this the worst-case scenario for Rick Barnes? You have a great regular season. Then Bruce Pearl blocks you for the SEC title. He beats you for the SEC tournament title. You go out relatively early everybody expects you to make a Final Four run this year, which is a pretty high expectation. And then he still goes past you. Is that the worst-case scenario for Rick Barnes in a town where people still love Bruce Pearl?
I'll give you 2 worst-case scenarios. One is he's having the kind of year he's having, and you're 16-16. That's a worst-case scenario. Another one, it's Conzo Martin instead of Bruce doing it to you.
Or they're both doing it. Yeah, okay. So in Mike's take, this is not the worst-case scenario. They're all worst cases.
You knew why Bruce left, and Bruce wasn't coming back. So,
yeah.
Chuck.
Well, you said to be quick in this segment, John. So to answer your question, yes. I mean, yes, it is. And we'll see how it goes against Kentucky. You know, Auburn's going to be a player down. That might be the end of their run. But, you know, of course it is, especially for that 30% of whatever it was of the fan base that's still in Bruce Pearl's corner.
And, you know, I've got a lot of loyalty with Bruce as well.
However, played for him, coached under him. Yeah.
The fact of the matter, yes, you're winning, but he's also had 2 assistant coaches that has been suspended in the last 12 months. So if fan base wants to go back through that, I mean, that's the other side of it, right? I mean, yes, they're winning, but there's the other. You're kind of sleeping with one eye open of like what else could happen. And do fans really want to do that again?
And my guess is this will not be the end of questionable stuff at Auburn. But let me ask this one just to you. All right, what happened after the Kentucky game? That seemed to be the high water mark. You beat them for the second time. It's a tournament semifinal game. Rick Barnes himself said that had a national championship feel to it. That was a knockdown, drag out. You come back the next night, you're not into it for the Auburn game, you get crushed. You don't look the same in the tournament. You don't stay focused for 40 minutes. Teams have runs, that's what basketball is nowadays. But this team had some major lapses at times. What happened? Did legs go out from under them? I mean, we talked about depth and minutes all year. Was it they get overconfident? Defense go? What happened?
I think 2 things. I do think depth. You look at Fulkerson played 9 minutes. You basically played 6 guys against Purdue, and I think that was a result of it down the stretch, your depth. But I think it's an identity crisis in multiple ways. Barnes is more of a defensive guy. We will lend more offense to this side of the year. Do we play through Grant or do we play through Admiral? Admiral's your quote-unquote leader. Grant's your best player. Do we play up-tempo or where Bone is really good, or do we slow it down and get the ball inside to our big guys? And so I think there was just an identity crisis of what are we down the stretch, what got us here, and so there was a lot of ebbs and flows of production on both ends of the floor.
They were really good all year when they went inside out. We talked about it. They had a tendency, even against Kansas early in the year, where they just started gunning up the threes. They got away from their game. They lost the game. Barely. But when you look at this team, how much of it was by the end of the year teams were making it harder and harder to go inside to Grant? So you didn't have an option 2 waiting on the other side. Other teams said, oh, let's take this away. You didn't really have an option that was as good as Grant Williams to go to.
Yeah, and then if you want to get up tempo where your other guys are really good and you're driving it and you're moving bodies to move the defense, well, now you don't have the legs, you don't have the bench strength to be able to do that. And so you had to slow it down, play through Grant, but now guards and everybody else was digging out on Grant, making it really hard.
That's the difference between Tennessee and Auburn. Auburn's 10 deep. I mean, they play
Right.
a lot of guys. I went back and looked. If you added up just the starters and the minutes over the course of the year, this was 2 weeks ago, Tennessee starters had played the equivalent of 5 extra games compared to Auburn. That makes a difference.
And Mike pointed out during that stretch too, John, it wasn't just inconsistent shooting by your guards, it was poor shooting by your guards during a key part of that stretch.
Even Purdue played 8 guys, double digits over 12 minutes. Tennessee played 6, and it's a big difference.
It makes a difference. All right, last thing I want to say. There's a lot of people have been talking about it was an embarrassment. You were ranked number 1, and you didn't make it to the Final Four. What a joke. Let me show you a graphic here. Duke, number 1 for 8 weeks this year. They may make it to the Final Four, but they narrowly escaped UCF and Virginia Tech. Had to rely on the other team missing tap-ins, basically.
And the Zebras.
Here we go. Gonzaga, number 1 for 5 weeks, lost in the Elite 8. Tennessee, number 1 for 4 weeks, lost the Sweet 16. Kansas, number 1, 5 weeks, lost in the second round. And you've got 2 number 1 seeds out, and Virginia almost lost last night. There's no embarrassment. They call it March Madness for a reason. It gets wild. Just being number 1 in the regular season doesn't guarantee you anything. Nothing at all. And I just threw our director there because we were going to close on that, but instead we came back to me. So we can tell you that coming next, we're talking football. Football's next. Then we got more basketball. We're going to look at UT's roster for next year. What's their lineup going to look like? Come on back.